Hi, I'm Floorboard, and welcome to my garage. My last two videos, I had myself riding my Sportster here. And in those videos, there was a daytime video and a nighttime video. There are a few things that I kind of learned in those two rides, which I wanted to share with you guys, So welcome to the first episode of Garage Talk. Well, you see, there are two key points that I really want to focus on in this video, which hopefully my experience will help some other inexperienced riders out there. I'm not the most experienced rider. I've been riding for about 12 years at this point, but not consistently. There were periods of time where my bike was just flat out garaged. There was a period of time where, really, for about 2 years, I wasn't riding at all. 2 to 3 years. So I do not consider myself an overly experienced rider, even though on paper I do have a lot of experience. So, those 2 points that I wanted to focus on. The first one is my camera, and the second is the bike itself. So let's talk about the camera. For the most part, the camera did very well. I don't have a GoPro. I have another brand. It's called a Akaso. And the camera itself is actually fairly nice. I had some older videos that I did where I shot with it, and then I kind of started watching videos on YouTube from people who are using the GoPro, and it kind of inspired me to look a little further into this. So, one thing is the settings on the camera I never really looked into. It turns out I was never really shooting in 4K. Not that I need 4K videos, it's just nice to have that extra level of detail when you're trying to compress into something that's going to be shared across multiple platforms. So you may have noticed before my 2 riding videos, I posted 2 review videos. And those videos were kind of to test out my camera settings and make sure things were good to go. Because before you go out, into the wild with the camera, you should make sure that indoors you're able to actually use your camera. So one of the things I found, like I said, was that I wasn't shooting in 4K. I found that some of my camera settings were incorrect. Another thing that my camera does is that it does what's called loop shooting, where it will shoot for X amount of minutes and then create a file, shoot another X amount of minutes, and in doing so, when it creates the next file, it kind of has about a second or 2 of the end footage from the previous video. So every time I edit a video, I have to take that out. So I don't think there's anything I can do about that. But something I could do, specifically related to this ride, is I did not change the battery for the ride home. So if you notice on the last 2 videos, one of them says Deerfield Beach to Weston. The second video says Weston to Coral Springs. And that's because coming back to Deerfield Beach, I decided that I was going to do back roads. It was nighttime, and on the highway there's really nothing to see at night. So I wanted some footage of, South Florida in the dark. And for the most part, I think I got some pretty good footage with the camera and the route that I decided to take, except for when I got to Coral Springs, because I was not paying attention, camera shut off. And what's kind of funny about that is the camera will say audible cues to me, I guess so that I can hear it for myself. The second I tried to get onto that first highway, I heard the camera on the footage say battery low. So why is that important? Why am I bringing this up? The battery, what can you do about it? Well, on my bike here, you probably see it. I think it says like Chase Harper. I've never heard of that brand, but it's actually a really good bag. I got it off of Amazon. I'll link it in the description. No kind of sponsorship. I'm not going to make money off of that. But in this bag, I did take a spare battery with me. And the whole reason why I didn't change it is because before I left where I was at, I checked the camera itself, and it said that there's like 3 bars on it. 2 bars were still full. Well, I guess the camera will give you a low battery signal when you're about halfway done. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Or maybe when you make it down to that last bar. But it lasted for a while. It lasted for a good half hour after it gave me the audible battery low. So that was my fault. I could have had probably about 15 more minutes of footage had I done that, but I didn't. Live and learn. So in the future, I'll make sure to be a little more keen on the battery. And as you may have seen from the daytime video, I do have a USB plug inside of, attached to my bike. I could always just run the USB cable directly to the camera, but then, you know, while riding, I'm going to have a USB cable hanging out of my face, you know, and then my phone can't have it. So I don't really have the solution for that yet. I do know that some guys online on YouTube are using kind of like battery packs, and they're plugging the camera into that. Maybe that's a route I'll go, you know, in the future, maybe when I'm taking my longer rides that I'm trying to do. Yeah. So as for the bike, it's really important that I talk about this for those who may not be super experienced and decide to wrench on their own bike. I broke a cardinal rule, and that is I did not do my pre-check before I left. And if you listen on the daytime video, you're probably going to hear like a clinking sound, like, you know, kind of noticeable within it. You know, I couldn't hear that on the motorcycle, but the camera sure picked that up. And what that clanking noise was my lower muffler. My lower muffler, when I got to where I was going, I took a picture of my bike, you know, I posted it online, like, hey, you know, great day to ride. And some of the more experienced guys with Sportsters pointed out, hey, your lower muffler isn't aligned. And I had actually noticed when I got to my destination before I took that picture that, yeah, my lower muffler was not aligned. And the pre-check here that I'm talking about is that on this lower muffler here, hopefully you can see that, I had taken out the screws at one point. I was kind of working on it. I never replaced them. And because of quarantine that was going on, it had been so long since I worked on it, I didn't remember. So when I got to where I was at, I was able to find a nut and bolt, you know, get that back in, and when you watch the nighttime video, you won't hear that sound anymore. But that could have been a very, very dangerous scenario that I caused for myself, just because I didn't take time to do my pre-checks. You should always do your pre-checks, you know, make sure your tires look good, make sure nothing's loose, check everything on your bike, check it. I did not, and I was on the highway for a half hour. Something could have gone awry, you know, but at the same time, I'm glad I did that little trip that I did, because this gives me the opportunity to really pay attention to my bike. When I got the bike back in March, I think it was March, and it was about 2 weeks before the lockdown started. So here in Florida, we did a 2-week lockdown, and that 2-week lockdown kind of turned into 3 months of being locked down. By the end of the 3rd month, our governor said, we're never doing lockdowns again. Well, damage has been done, you know. I won't go too far into my quarantine story about everything, because everyone has their own. We were all in this together. We all know what happened. But in my case, I purchased this vehicle and I never rode it. So now it's December. I'm finally getting on it. You know, last month I posted 2 videos because I rode it to a friend's house. I really wanted to get it out. But now I really need to start spending some time on it. So, second issue, which this is not, I probably wouldn't have caught this in my pre-checks, in all fairness, but when I was on it, recently I purchased these mini floorboards here, and I never really tested them too much. The only testing I did with them, I was wearing sneakers. I kind of went around my neighborhood, and felt great, felt fine, but I wear some weatherproof, actually I have them right here. I wear these boots. So these are Harley-Davidson all-weather, weatherproof, whatever the hell you want to call them, solid boots. And the problem that I had with these new floorboards was that when I put the boot on it, I was hitting the brake pedal. So the brake pedal was too low for my boot. I ended up at the bottom of my boot here, where there's kind of like a notch in it. I pushed it up against the mini floorboard, and that's how I rode on the highway. Otherwise, my foot would have been slipping off. So when I got home, I ended up, well, this morning really, it wasn't when I got home, but this morning I went to the bike, you know, I looked at the brake system, and there's really just 2 adjuster nuts that you do, and then you can change the position of the brake rod, and that lifted it up for me. So now when I put the boot on there, instead of being, you know, unable to do it, I can fit my boot completely comfortably underneath the brake pedal, and the brake pedal is high enough that I can really get some pressure on there and stop the bike. Now the reason why I just said about the pre-check on that is on this brake rod, I don't know when this happened. I haven't really worked on this too often, but I was missing the screw. There's a screw that holds the brake rod in place. The brake rod itself is not going to just fall out, unless you have it very loose and there's a ton of distance. But because the brake rod pushes up against the brake pedal, that really holds it in place for you. So by me not having that screw in place, I really didn't put myself in a dangerous position. It's just I didn't have as far to push on the rear brake. So that's fixed now. And as far as I can tell, those were really the only two issues that I had. So again, I should have done my pre-checks. I did not. It could have been a lot worse than it was. But, I'm not really going to embellish in it because, these bikes are beasts. If you don't have a Sportster, you don't have a Harley-Davidson, they're pretty much known. The joke about them, I should say, is, oh, they're always leaking oil, parts are always falling off of them. And to me, that's kind of the charm with them. It's my first Harley ever. And to me, a bike that is known for falling apart but still has such a strong community behind it, it really speaks volumes to me. So that's what it is. Maybe in the future I'll do a little intro video to my previous motorcycles and my riding experience itself, but that's another video. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining me for this episode of Garage Talk. Maybe I'll do it more frequently. Maybe there's some inexperienced wisdom that I can share with everyone. But until then, I'm Fork. This is my garage, and thank you for joining me.